What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is the show where you teach you to make massive income, not just passive income with your real estate investing business. This is episode 202. And if it's your first time
Did
here,
I miss 201?
No, 201s are going to be our interview episode that came out this past Friday.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, did I miss 201?
No, this is your first time here. I am Mike DeHaan here with my co-host Dan Austin. And on these Wednesday Mike and Dan shows, we talk about real estate, investing, business, and whatever else we feel like. Mm-hmm. And if you guys are unfamiliar with us and our general, views, we are very opinionated people, and we also like to have beef with random individuals, particularly if they're out in the space, especially the real estate space. There's a lot of gurus, a lot of people that talk a lot of trash. And a particular person that we like to talk a lot of trash on or have beef with is Pace Morby of SubTo. And I am so excited, Dan, because I've had my first direct interaction with him after these years of, just sort of seeing from afar just being
saying stuff out in the ether and not really getting anything back.
Yeah. And being open that I'm not okay with the way that he oversimplifies subject to and the way that he has created this community of a bunch of people who are taking these predatory tactics to swindle both sellers and buyers into buying deals that make no financial logical sense. And
the thing I will say before I want to preface this, a couple things, two things. First, I think it's hilarious that because you listen to the Tribe Millionaires podcast. I listened to there where Pace Morby was on there, and Jamie Gruber had asked some questions, taken a poll of people, and you had actually posted some questions in our Facebook group about hey, ask these questions, which he did. Yeah. Which was good, I think. So I think that the funny thing is, I think that the way we both think alike, we're like, oh, he said to DM him, let's talk some shit. Boom, boom, we DM'd him. And the other thing I like about it, I want to mention is, I do respect the fact that he actually did honor what he said halfway, correct, which is hit me up in the DMs. I love my haters and I will get back to you. And he did.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess just to clarify that really quick, because he was on a show called Tribe of Millionaires, which is the GoBundance podcast, which Dan and I are both very involved in GoBundance. We know the host of that show, and he asked people for questions. We both inquired, and he got Pace actually to show up on this interview. It was a very hard thing to do. And at the very end of the show, Pace said, if he has any haters, send him a DM on Instagram, and he would be more than happy to address the concerns. And I was literally on an airplane listening to this, and I paid for Wi-Fi immediately
just to do this,
just so I could send a DM with all of my concerns from the episode. Yeah. And the episode was fine. I mean, Jamie did about as good as he could do with his relatively limited knowledge of being a real estate operator.
It started out pretty good. He was asking some pretty strong questions that were obviously questions that people had wrote in to have him ask, which were good questions.
Yeah, but he was not quite enough of an experienced operator with transaction volume to know kind of the probing questions.
Level 2 and level 3 questions once you follow up questions to ask.
Yeah. And so Pace had, pretty surface level responses. And so I DM'd him with a list of the things that I have problems with about subject to and the things that he never seems to address. And he sent me back that same day, a few hours later, a video response. I know you got one too. Mm-hmm. And on top of that,
which is pretty awesome, in a way that he did that.
Totally,
because we could use it however we want.
I know. Yeah. And at first, I texted you and I was like, "Do you think it's a canned thing?" You said no. He addressed yours very specifically.
Very specific with mine too. Yep.
Yeah, but then he followed up with a handful of DMs. And first off, he sent me a link to his YouTube page, and he said, "I have 2,900 videos. Most of them are 4 to 6 hours long. All of your concerns are addressed in there. Go look in those." Okay. And then he said, I responded back and I was like, well, do you have any more specific direction? There's a ton of material in there. If you tell me where to go, I would be happy to go and find these answers myself. And then he sent over some other jargon. He said, I'm happy to invite you out to my office in Arizona. I'll bring our attorneys, our escrow officers. We can do a class if you'd like. And I said, awesome. That sounds great. I was like, let me know when. I will pay my own way down there. I am more than happy to make the trip and be educated. And I was like, we can do it this week if you want. I don't really care.
I'll even pay you for the time.
Yeah, I'll even pay for the time, right?
You want $1,000 an hour? I'll do it.
And to that, he kind of diverted it. And then he went on this weird sort of tangent about how he does too much content, and people that tend to hate don't fully consume all of it, which is impossible to do, and that's fine. And then he threw this curveball at me and he said, another issue I have is that the hateful people are usually white men who are just jealous, who are just full of jealousy and envy.
Yeah. He said that on the TOM on the Try to Millionaires podcast too, which I was like, where are you taking that, dude? Like, why is it white men? I'm
like, that's completely irrelevant. But I said that that's not the case at all. I know plenty of wealthy people and, do not have the same sort of animosity because they don't go out and lie to the masses and become like the main brand built off of lies. And so anyway, I tried to like go back and forth with a handful of things. And basically what he just kept doing was he just kept trying to like one up me over and over and over again. Like he kept going to, I travel around, I own 500 million in real estate. I went to 110 cities last year, meeting with members. He's like, I understand it's crazy. I'm the only person who gives so much time to my community. I have 5 million people who watch my YouTube channel monthly. He did all these sort of things. And I kept being like, hey, cool. So when do you want to fly me out, bro?
When am I getting my trip?
and you eventually completely brushed that off. And I went back and forth with him for like over an hour. And then ultimately he never came back around to that. And he said, I'll invite my 3 haters. We can hang out all day. And I said, anytime over the summer, let me know. And he said, great. He'll post a story about it this week. He has yet to do that. And then ultimately he started sending me these voice messages, which was quite funny actually, because I was in the car. And so like my wife was like listening to him and sending responses for me. And my wife's response was like, God, I feel like he's just so condescending with everything.
Weird. It's kind of weird.
It's like so unnecessary because he went from wanting to take me out to no longer not wanting me to come out. But then said, he sends me this voice message. He's like, hey, if you want to, we can have you come and join one of our calls. And we'll have over 1,000 people there on my calls. And what you can do is you can address them and you can tell them all the things that you don't like about what they do in the SubTo community. And they can provide you some guidance. And and because we're all abundance mindset, they'll probably want to do deals and JVs and stuff with you. And I responded, absolutely. Tell me when the calls are. Here's my email. Invite me to one. I'll show up. And he just responded with, we do 38 calls a week. I'm not even joking. These are all different kinds of calls that we do. We have our attorneys. We have all these experts. And I was like, that's amazing. Here's my email. Add me to one. I will happily come 1 versus 1,000 and tell them all the things that I don't like about what you guys do. And he sent me another voicemail basically talking about how big his community is and all these other things. And I said, thanks. 3rd time, here's my email. Send me an invite. I will happily come on. And then he just liked it and then stopped responding to me. So he won't like I'm happy to
engage. He'll engage at the surface level. He just won't. Yeah. I took a more like very specific approach with my questions. I was like, here's exactly like what I don't like. And the ones that I zoned in on and he responded really focused on was insurance. I said, hey, on the podcast, you talk about having to use a specific insurance company. And the way he explained it was, and this is where Jamie did not dive in any deeper, which was at a point where you really could have, where Pace said that he has a special insurance company that he uses for SubTo insurance. And he does that. And basically what they do is you keep the seller's insurance in place, then you get insurance through this other special SubTo insurance company. And a week later, the SubTo insurance agent calls the seller's insurance and cancels it. A week later. The question is, and I asked us, why do you need to do that? It seems like you're going and playing like cloak and dagger, like you're going behind other people's back. I was just asked specifically, why do you need to have 2 insurers for a week? Like, what's the reason? And you and I both know what the reason is. And the reason is because you do not want to trigger a due on sale clause when you call the lender and change insurance companies. You're trying to avoid that. So, among other things.
Yeah.
And also there is a problem with having 2 insurers on there. It's not, and he explains it as you're being double insured. It's like perfect. Like if something bad happens, 2 people pay you. It's like, that's not how insurance companies work. You and I know firsthand that's not how insurance companies work. Their whole goal is to not pay you. And if they have a reason to say that they're not the payee, they're definitely not going to pay
exactly.
out.
And so I guess just to simplify that, if you have two insurance companies, they're both going to basically say it's the other one's responsibility and neither one is actually going to provide the insurance. You might as well just have none.
Right, exactly. And if they do come to terms, it's going to be months and months later. So you're going to be out, whatever the problem is. Right.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, so he as well sent me a video message kind of saying some of the same stuff that you had brought up, which, cool and good on him. And he responded like you said, like the same day, which was kind of cool. And then the voice message, because I kept pinging him on the insurance, so he sends me a voice message, and he basically says it's because most people. This is the reasoning why you need. And he gave me the link to steadilypartner.com, which is the insurance company he uses. The guy's name is Book a Call with Lucas, which I totally will talk to Lucas about this. Basically is because people don't know how to do insurance and they don't know how to do it themselves and they screw it up when you're doing SubTo deals. So you have to go through. So he says, I taught this insurance company how to do it and they know how to do it the right way now. So that's why we have to use it, because people don't know how to do it. And I'm thinking in my head, like, man, insurance agents have been around a long time. I've bought a lot of properties. I know how to get insurance. There's no tricky thing about it. Unless you're trying to do something where you're going behind someone's back and playing this cloak and dagger game, which is the whole part about SubTo. It's just like he'll never answer those things directly on the podcast. He didn't. He just kept diverting the conversation, which he's a very overbearing and tactical speaker when it comes to, if you're asking him questions, he's a politician. He just diverts it and he says, I've done thousands of these deals. My sellers give me hugs and buy me gifts and tell me how great I am, and goes down that path and never directly answers the question at hand. And that's why I think you can, a lot of people, if you have confirmation bias, because you're like, I want this to work out, this get rich quick, no money down, real estate investing, they want it to work. So they have confirmation bias. And they're like, yeah, he has thousands of people he's done thousands of these deals. And you know how hard it is to do that, first of all?
Yeah.
And second of all, it's like, that's like, people aren't just calling you and hugging you and sending you Christmas cards.
Yeah, that's not how this business works at all. And the fact that he kept saying that too was really weird. Like that's like such a weird narcissistic thing to say. And the biggest red flag as well is, you're right, with the insurance company, his answer to everything that doesn't make sense, he goes, oh, that's because people don't know how to do it. And I had to teach them how to do it. And so you're telling me that all these multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar freaking industries have no idea how to do anything of what you do? That means that it's not real. Right? Like, honestly, that means that it is a fake thing that you are exaggerating, and you're probably making some alternative company that he has ownership in that is structuring ways in the gray that he has somehow been able to justify. Right. And the thing is he kept doing that over and over and over again. But then at the same time in that episode, he goes, Subject 2 has been around forever. If you look at every single realtor doc, it has the option to purchase Subject 2. So everyone should know how to do this. But then also no one knows how to frickin' do it. And he has to teach them how to do it. You have to use this specific company, which also tend to share similar names to his brands. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just, the whole thing is just asinine. And what it comes down to, it's not because I'm a white dude that's jealous, right? It's not because I look at all the opportunity he's created, I'm like, man, I wish I'd thought of that at all. It's the fact that he is a grifter, that is a politician that has convinced people that he has this magic formula, and he lies and sort of just manipulates his way to make it into a tangible thing, which is not legitimate at all. Right. And it's just so crazy to me. And I have yet to see him have a conversation with an actual operator that isn't playing the same game.
Totally.
Because everyone that we talk to that is an actual operator that is doing any sort of volume in this business or has the experience where they've taken their licks, they've done complex transactions, they've kind of gone around the block with owning rentals, doing traditional flips and flips, doing wholesaling, doing creative financing stuff. They all look at him and I have a really weird feeling just about him, in his vibe. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
But the problem is all the long form stuff he does is with people that are literally doing the exact same, we're going to just get a bunch of money from these idiots, or they're from people that don't have that level of experience. And so they can't ask the actual hard hitting questions.
Totally.
Right. And I don't know. If this ever gets back to him, which you guys should go and DM him this episode and say, you talked to these guys last week and you left them on read. We want to have that conversation. I'd be more than happy to, but I don't want surface level freaking responses to the actual challenging questions.
Yeah,
You know, it's
exactly.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Either way, he's still the biggest, richest dude out there, and we're just nobodies. But it's trash.
We are haters.
Yeah. But I mean, I also, if any of you are in that community and you would like me to come and face you guys 1 versus 1,000, I am more than happy to do that. I am fully confident in what we do and the knowledge that we've built.
1,000% confident I could go in the room and have an intelligent conversation about this and not have a single person in there tell me how they're doing this at scale and they're doing it ethically and they're able to do it without these weird tools that you need to do it with.
Yeah. And these weird like things that are so outside of the industry norms, industries that have been around forever, you know, and I said to him as well, one of my messages, I was like, dude, I hope, I seriously do, that you can change my mind and show me this is legitimate, because with my sort of background and my skill set of building out a marketing and sales team, if you can truly change my mind and show me how easy it is, I will make so much money.
Right.
Right. Like
really
I can
that
just,
easy. Yeah.
If it's really that easy, I already have the base, like we will destroy. But he just brushed that off and says like, oh, just come to one of my calls. We have 39 of them a week, but I can't tell you when any of them are. Shut the fuck up. It's so stupid.
39 a week.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, no wonder you have a bunch of people out there that are failing because they can't go to any of them.
Yeah.
Right? They have jobs.
They have jobs. Exactly. There's 39 calls a week, and they also, none of them have the calendar invites because nobody knows when they are.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Anyway, that was my excitement for the weekend and last week. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll get an impromptu invite down to Phoenix to go and see what he does.
I'll be there a few weeks, so you should let me come to the ranch.
Yeah, there we go.
Also, what is with all these like somewhat well-to-do real estate guys that have done, I should say real estate guys, but like, you know, online, you know, influencers in the real estate space that are like pretending to be cowboys now. Like they have like cowboy hats, and like Ryan Pineda was doing it. Pace Morby's doing it.
I don't know.
There's a bunch of these guys like, we went on this dude ranch, and I'm like, and nothing wrong with dude ranches, right? But every time I hear that, I think of something that's just not good. Like what happens on dude ranch.
I guess I haven't seen that. I also feel like there's a certain generation that like really likes to go and do man shit out at like a ranch.
I don't know. Like Ryan Pineda, I feel like he's like not any different than our age group.
Like not by age. I mean, well, I would say you're a little bit older than me. I'd say a lot of guys I'm talking about are probably closer to your age, not mine.
So like how old are you?
Me, I'm 33.
So yeah, 5-year difference.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not a lot.
It is not a lot, but like it kind of is. I mean, because we've talked about this, because I grew up with the internet from a very young age. You didn't.
Yeah. You grew up, we talk about this a lot because you're a millennial trying to be a Gen Z. So you are on the other trend of things. You take the worst traits of Gen Z and you take those on. So you have the worst of millennial and the worst of Gen Z.
You know how I know that there's a difference? Because you get so offended every single time this comes up. But yeah, I don't know what that is though. I've seen that as well with like the weird identity things. I mean, that whole like group of inside baseball players in the real estate influencer space is just like ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah.
All the stuff that they're doing. They just do anything to get eyes, to get views, to sell whatever product they have. I don't even know how many deals those guys do. And if they don't, that's fine. Just don't pretend like you do.
Yeah.
You know, like honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay to a certain extent. Yeah. Just don't act like you do. Or like, don't keep trying to teach the same shit that worked 10 years ago because it doesn't work today. It just, it can't. That's business in general.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean, and that's like my biggest knock on a lot of those guys is it's not that different from like the successful entrepreneur who's like, oh, well, I do the cold baths and everything like that. It's like, well, what you do, like what you did to get successful is not that, right? Now it's like basically what got you rich is not what you're doing right now. It's a little bit different. It's the same with like a lot of people that are trying to teach these real estate methodologies they did in like 2016, and now they're preaching as like a gospel in 2024. Yeah, it's like it just doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it's an unfortunate situation. Yeah,
so
whatever.
Anyways, all right, we'll move on from that though. But that was my
one thing to note when I was staring at my screen. So next year, and I'm saying this on the podcast because I would love to the people that went to KeysCon and got their free swag because they went to KeysCon. That's why it's worth going. I really feel like the logo is a little low.
It is low on that. you know, and that is probably
So
poor
it's gotta be
QC on our part.
up here for the screen, you know, so I
Yeah.
can have it on the screen so I can get that free hashtag KeysCon 2023.
For sure. I mean, that is poor QC. I'll be honest though, where that got put up, because our guy that put together, that is, I think, is just like the default location where it's like, here you go,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
going on the shirt.
Yeah,
So you
on
gotta,
like the print shop. That's kind of what I assumed. I was like, gosh, I can't see it when I look down. I mean, it's not like that low, but
it's like below your nipples, dude. Like that's not
go look on the YouTube channel and tell what you all think.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm glad
KeysCon
my coffee cup, since we're talking about like video stuff, I'm glad my coffee got this thing changes colors when it's hot.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about that?
There you go. Fancy.
No, so what's behind this
love that.
is not okay on for YouTube. YouTube would have to bleep it out.
Okay.
Yeah, so a good friend of mine gave me this coffee cup specifically to get me caught off guard. You know, what's that big black dude's name? You know what I'm talking about? The guy from COVID, everybody that's leaning down on his knees. What's his name?
Oh, yeah. I have no idea who that is. I know the meme you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. And so my in-laws were over the other day, and I was making a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden I looked down, and this whole coffee cup is white. It's black if you're watching the audio version. And this dude's on there, and I'm like, oh my God, dude.
And your mother-in-law's holding it.
Yeah. I was just like, oh my God, dude. This is like what Troy, I know Troy listens to the podcast, so he got me. Yeah. Got me, dude.
Yeah, that's funny.
But the best part about it is I'm still drinking out of it like 2 days later.
I mean, you might as well. Yeah, it's a cup. It does its job.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, for the KeysCon 2024, which we have coming up here in June, we'll get some better
get some updated shirt locations.
Yeah. I was gonna do them all a little bit better. So cool. But besides that, business is buzzing. We have been busy getting a bunch of closings figured out. Had our first deal of the year that we had to drop. We've had to drop today, but besides that, we've had a 100% close rate so far, which has been great. And I mean, we've just been getting everything sort of like ironed out with like trying to figure out how to handle the closings at a little bit more volume, because after a while, the system we have is like, there's no way to figure out how inefficient your systems are than when you start to grow and you're like, this worked great up to this amount of volume. And now that we're exceeding that, we really need to, get things a little bit more on lock. And that's the same pattern for if you're doing marketing, if you're doing sales, if you're managing transactions, if you're managing your projects for fix and flips, whatever it is. It's really important to sort of like monitor kind of like your stress levels, honestly, or like what I would call just like your oh shit factor. Like if you feel like you're constantly like, oh shit, that didn't go right, it probably means that you need to just go back and assess either your team or your systems, because you're probably reaching the limitation of what your current system can sustain.
And
like,
you're like, you said, it's almost like you're like, if you feel like you're constantly losing control, like you can't control everything, it's probably because you don't have the right systems in place.
Or enough staff or something along those lines, right?
Yeah, staff, systems. Yeah, it doesn't always have to be a system. I know we talk about systems and SOPs all the time. Sometimes things can be solved by just having a person.
They can, or like just having something like actually documented, written out. This is an interesting thing that I've come to find as I've gotten involved in a few different like entrepreneurial groups that I would say have like newer entrepreneurs. Is when you say you're going to systematize something, what they imagine is that you're building out some like really complex set of like automations that make things go like a system, right?
Yeah.
Like
you push a button and it goes.
You push a button and but that's not what it means at all. Like honestly, most quote unquote systems are just like a repeated process for doing something that can be done by yourself. It could be done by a virtual assistant. It could be done by like a combination of different like email sequences or like checks and balances that are like a combination of software with like a manual touch. It's about having a repeated way that you do the same thing so that you know what the anticipated outcome is going to be. And it's not about like creating the most complex like connections of integrations and Zapier zaps and Zapier zaps, whatever that system's called, and all these different things to try and make like this perfect thing. And I feel like new entrepreneurs, new business owners, they tend to fixate on that and try to put those together because it is like a quote unquote productive procrastination tool. Like they don't want to be doing their follow-up. So instead they're like, I'm going to build the perfect automated follow-up system. It's like, or you could just freaking call them. You have 60 leads.
Totally.
You don't need to do an automated follow-up process.
Yeah, a lot of times an SOP or a process is really just to highlight the exceptions and kick those out. Because if you try to capture every exception, which is like what you're talking about, trying to make this thing perfect, like you're never going to get it, because there's always going to be exceptions. And so you baseline what is normal, and that gets processized, and then you have a process for kicking out the exceptions. So as somebody can make the decision, like you as the owner or the leader of that part of the company, you can make a decision what to do, and then that person can now complete that portion of it just with that single decision. Because sometimes it is a nuanced approach, and it takes a human eye on things, and that's okay. You just don't want that to be too much, because otherwise then the exceptions really they're not exceptions anymore. They're just part of the system. They need to be put back into the SOP.
Exactly. And just because you build out a system and you have people in place to do it too, this is another recurring challenge that we've been seeing, particularly with people in scale that have started to build out their sales teams, is they go like, oh yeah, I feel like, things are like they fall off the rails every so often. It's like, well, yeah, you have to monitor it and maintain it.
Right.
Like you can't just go like, cool, here's the process. Have fun, person in the Philippines, just go do this now. If you never like maintain it and actually check to make sure they're doing it, people will get lazy. They will take shortcuts. They will try to like find a way that requires them to have to put less effort into it. Like that is literally human nature.
They'll just forget, because honestly, people like, here's the other thing. Like when you write out an SOP and step-by-step, yeah, people are going to read it and look through it once. But if there's no reason to, they're not going to just like check that every single day. Nobody would. That'd be brain numbing. And so things the balls get dropped, and you have to kind of manage it. And that's why we have managers and management systems in place.
Yeah. And honestly, I'll say most of the time you're lucky if they read through it once. Most people, they're going to just start tinkering with stuff, and then they will go and reference it when they have questions, especially when you're bringing on sales guys. I would say, I don't know, probably every single sales guy we've ever brought on, we give them like the entire onboarding SOPs. They proceed to open it maybe and just go, nah. And they just go into the CRM and start calling people. And then they're
ask
like,
you questions.
Yeah. They're like, hey, like, so I need to figure out how to comp this deal. How do I do that? It's like, well, did you look at the calculator in the SOPs? And they go, what are the SOPs? I haven't seen that. You've been here for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
What have you been doing?
It's so true. It is so true.
Which is fine. Like, I don't know. I would rather have people, I will say, I would rather have people that do that enthusiastically, as long as they're willing to learn and adapt within the business once you sort of point them where to go, as opposed to having the person that comes in for 2 weeks and they take, what should be a 2-day onboarding process and drag it out forever because they're afraid to get started. If you ever have that person, you should probably just fire them, because they're not going to do very well for you.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're a salesperson, they're not already making a call in their first few days, like they're probably not a salesperson.
Yeah. And same thing on that too, is when you have new salespeople that come in, they will botch calls. Like, absolutely. And you have to accept that and allow them to learn from that, and remind yourself that that was literally you before you hired this person. You were the one that would sometimes botch the calls. And just because it's somebody else doesn't mean that you can, bring down the hand of God.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's the training curve. And then there's also just the constant, like, things do happen. Shit happens. People aren't perfect. You were never perfect. So don't think you were. Yeah. And you might even see early on, like, a dip in your sales, your closings, or whatever the task is, like productivity for that. But as that person, if you follow up and if you train and retrain and kind of give them that feedback, like the feedback loop of saying, here's where I think you could do better. Here's where you dropped the ball. If you don't give them that, then they're never going to get better. But if you are, they actually get better over time. You can't expect people to come into your company and do things well right away. It just doesn't happen, especially because even though you try to document things, even to try to have systems, it's still like a black hole for most of these people. They don't know where the bookends are until they've kind of learned it. You have to, like, it's like any new thing. You kind of got to push around until you find where the bookends, where the boundaries are of that skill or that task. And you're like, okay, now I can see what good looks like and what great could be.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's for some reason, I think maybe when people are newer, they're less kind to that. Probably they have less of an abundance mindset. They still feel like every single opportunity is precious. But if you have, going back to that system where you're doing things on a repeated basis, there will always be more opportunities that come your way. Right.
For sure.
Honestly. So besides that, we got transactions going. Our rental property stuff is still a freaking nightmare. Still got bed bugs, you said. And now we're basically going to gas that entire unit, this has been going on for like months now.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, mostly because the pest company that our property manager uses is maybe just not the best company. And so in lieu of them returning our money like I had requested after the first month, just give us our money back. It was like $2,000 or something like that. They proceeded to go back to that place multiple times, 6, probably 7 times at this point. And every time they're like, whew, there's still bed bugs here.
Yeah,
I wonder why. Let's just do the same exact thing. And we did get to the point where they cut holes in the wall and like gassed inside the walls. And they're like, golly, we've never seen this before. And I'm like, I don't know. Did you go to the unit next door? They're like, no, we didn't see any in there. I'm like, yeah, but like, I don't know. I didn't see any bed bugs when I was in this house either. And that house next door is full of crap. And they already said, yeah, it was pretty gross in that unit. There was a lot of crap in there. I was like, and you don't think there's bed bugs in there?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully we'll get it figured out at some point, but yeah, I mean, hopefully it'll be relatively easy to
$4 or
fill
$5,000 in missed revenue. It's okay. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the name of the game though. That's why we always say, if you're going to own rental properties, you should do it at some sort of scale, because otherwise, you know, these sort of things, if like this was your only property, that's $4 or $5,000 of missed revenue. That's also an expense to you. Versus, you know, the fact that we have a little portfolio, at least it kind of like covers itself. Totally. You know, even though we don't make any money, it doesn't necessarily like lose on a monthly basis.
Yeah, you probably, you know, actually the truth of it is you probably should just have 1 or 10 or more.
Right. Like only one, or
like one, because you can float it, you know, you have a little excess income. So that's why you have the rental property. It's easier to manage. It's less likely to have issues because you're on top of it. But beyond 1, there's no point in having 2, 3 or 4. It really isn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard that about a lot of businesses though in general, right? Because owning rental properties is fundamentally a business, but
it is.
Yeah. I've heard people say, like, let's say you own like a gym. You probably shouldn't like have one gym location then open like, oh, the South Side gym location, right? Because you're going to have basically just more problems, but not enough revenue to actually outsource it correctly. But if you open a chain of gyms and you have like 6 of them, then you have enough scale that you can cross over systems. You can probably cross over staff. You can have different like general managers that can go across both places.
Yeah.
But the
I
problem
agree.
is
like, there's that state. Like, I agree with you. Like a lot of brick and mortar business, especially is like that, is like, once you have enough to have like a general manager, like you can actually start growing and scaling, and it's less work for you and more income but if you have like 1 or 2, you may not need it. Like your general manager maybe can manage 10. So you're paying, you know, 100% for 20% capacity, right? So you really need to get to that scale quickly so you can do that. Otherwise, you're just running around doing everything half-assed. Yeah. Same thing with rental properties.
Exactly, right? Rental properties, or even like wholesale business, you know, or like a flipping business. If you decide that you're going to do 1 deal a month and you're perfectly comfortable doing that, the problem is if you don't do 1 deal a month, you do 0 deals, and that means you have no revenue and you only have expenses. Yeah. Right. Or like I remember that father-son group that we met a while back, and their whole business plan, which I guess like their dad's retirement or whatever, is they would flip 1 house a year and they would just like live off of that, and they would go spend time at the lake and do whatever. It's like, that's awesome. What happens when you lose your ass in that 1 flip, right? Or you're not able to find a property to flip? Does that mean that you're just not making any money for the year?
Yeah, you're like literally just riding the margins so tight. Like you need to have a little bit of scale, a little bit of excess, so that, you know, maybe you didn't do 10 this year, but you did 8. You know, you can still live off of 8 flips.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like, I guess, look at your goals, because if you're okay with that volatility and, you know, you just literally want to focus on spending time with your kids or whatever.
Well, let's I guess be honest, like bigger isn't always better. Sure. You know, there is still that growth cycle where as you're getting bigger, and this is like, going back to the beginning of this conversation, is like the difference between 1 and 10 units is 9 more units. And that just doesn't happen overnight for most people. And so when you talk about that, or, you know, maybe you're doing 1 wholesale deal on average a month, to get to 5, like there's a lot in between that. And so getting bigger isn't better, because in that growth phase, if you don't get out of it, or it takes you 5 years, you might say, I don't want to get out of it. Like, I don't want to do that. I was happier with 1. My margins were huge. Like you and I know this, like our margins when we were doing less deals, when we were doing like 3 or 4 a month, our margins were huge. It was fat margins, because you don't need any of the overhead staff that we have now doing 20 deals a month.
I know. I've actually been thinking about this recently as I was looking at like our gross margin on our business. And I think back to when it was just like us and like 2 people and like we were making good money. Now, I was looking on Stripe, and between that and then all of our wholesale deals, so basically between our partnership program, our wholesale deals, and scale, we've done about $800K in gross revenue already for 2024 in the first quarter, which is pretty sweet. Like that's a really solid year, but we're not getting paid very much right now because we're reinvesting so much in the business and we have so much overhead because we're building out.
We've really created about $1 million in value in Q1, and that doesn't necessarily trickle down to your wallet.
No, not at all, right? Yeah, and it's very different because we have staff that we pay for. You know, we're putting some good money into the KeysCon event that we're putting on in June. We're reinvesting a lot of money into our software system that we're building out for the scale, not for scale, for the partnership members, for the Backyard Home Buyers partners. We just acquired Simply Leads, just a marketing, texting, and cold calling company, which has taken more capital.
Yep.
Right. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, well, I guess we're not actually making any personal paychecks, even though the fact that we've had almost $1 million come through our bank account in 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all that reinvestment, man.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that's just from the collecting keys businesses. That's not including our lending business or our rental properties.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what business and people don't fully understand.
Wholesale and flips that we do here in Spokane that are just in here. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's also too, like, if you guys are ever listening to other people and they talk about how they have a multi 7-figure year business, right? So I guess for context, we have done across all of our business, we've probably done $1 million this year already at the end of Q1. And we have made, we pay ourselves, like $4,000 a month as our base.
Our base salary is $5,000. Yeah.
$60,000 a year each. And so that's all that we have personally made across all that. Everything else has been reinvested.
Yeah. I mean, it could be another bank account somewhere, but we don't really track it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So point being, people can be completely full of shit and they can talk about all these numbers, but if they don't tell you their net profit, you have no idea what exactly they're doing.
Yeah. And I guess for context, especially as you look at other businesses and you're trying to compare yourself, and smaller businesses like a small wholesale operation where you're doing a couple, 2-3 deals a month, you're going to have 60 to 7% margins. Like it's true. Like you should. Absolutely. And that's awesome. As you get bigger and bigger, those margins get smaller, but the numbers get bigger, right? So, most people aren't developing a software program like us and some of the other things that we're doing because we have different visions for our business outside of just the core business of wholesaling and flipping and buying rental properties. But if you're looking just at the macro level, from a small business standpoint, like 10% EBITDA, like 10% margin, is probably good. If you can find a business that's doing more than that, that's probably a really good business to look into, depending on what the sale price is. So, you can see a business, it's not uncommon to see businesses doing 3 to 5 million a year in revenue, and then the owner to be making 300,000 to 500,000 on that, which is, that 10%. The tough thing is if you want to own that business, you either need to build it from ground up, which that owner probably spent 5 to 10 years or longer building that, and you're going to have some debt to buy it because they're going to want a multiple of that 300,000 to 500,000. And that debt does not come cheap. SBA loans are expensive. Seller financing costs money. And so it's tough to crack into that as well. But those are good margin numbers that I see.
It is. And I think a good point of context for that is, Alex Hermosi with his acquisition.com stuff. He always says that he is a cash flow investor. He wants cash flowing business. Like that is his focus. And his base criteria he says this on every podcast, for companies that are looking at for acquisition.com now, is it needs to be 10 million top line and 1 million net profit. Okay. So he's looking for businesses that have a 10% true profit margin, right? And in his mind, that is a pretty solid, aggressive business that has upside. And so you think about, for all the people that don't qualify for that, realistically, people are significantly less than that on a actual net profit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know. It's just that it's important to have context as you're growing businesses and understanding that the trade-off for having larger systems, more people in place, honestly being able to have a little bit more of a flexible lifestyle and more upside is you will make less money, and that's okay.
That is okay.
But you can also grind your way to $1 million+ with a team of 3 people. We've done that as well. That's what we did back in 2021. And now we're trying to do something bigger than that. And it requires a lot more investment and human capital than we would have expected. But, cool. Boom. Right on. Anything else to wrap up, Dan?
No, I like it.
See?
Let's do it.
Right on, guys. Well, appreciate you all listening. share this with your friends, family, neighbor, hair cutter, that Uber driver who like asks you what you do. Just tell him that you're a real estate investor. You listen to this really cool podcast that he should also listen to. I still follow the Uber driver that we had after
Lift with Zoe, dog. I see him once in a while on my stories.
It's getting back in the gym. Shout out to Lift with Zoe on Instagram.
Probably does not listen to our podcast.
He definitely does it. But anyways, guys, we appreciate y'all listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See y'all.